plays cards like Mox Opal and Springleaf Drum, which allow him to get a very quick Tezzeret into play at times. So functions similar to an Affinity deck, very aggressive. Plays 4 copies of Cranial Plating, has Etched Champion and Master of Ethereum. So, Cranial Plating on a Etched Champion is pretty good in any format.
One of the things about Cranial Plating, kills out of nowhere potentially if it's in the hand, but also out of nowhere he can kill with Tezzeret, Agent of Bolas, just essentially doing a huge shotgun blast to the face with one of the modes on Tezzeret.
So turn 1 Thoughtseize from Evan Allen's, pretty good start from him. He can try to see if there is a Cranial Plating, which there is, and can't tell what that other card is in the hand there. Is that a Signal Pest, it looks like, maybe? It's like an alternate art card. But Cranial Plating is probably the most threatening card right here. Springleaf Drum is another card that can be annoying simply because... so yes, the alternate art card in front of the Darksteel Citadel is a FNM promo Signal Pest. And so looks like Thoughtseize will probably take the Cranial Plating here. Darksteel Citadel, Signal Pest, Cranial Plating, Galvanic Blast, Springleaf Drum, Glimmer Void, and Frogmite. And the Cranial Plating goes to the graveyard, and Evan passes the turn. So let's see, do we get a Mem Knight here to really make... Oh, Mox Opal.
That was a sick draw.
This can be a reasonable turn. We're going to see a Springleaf Drum come down, Mox Opal, Signal Pest, and a Frogmite. And he could always cast that Galvanic Blast if he chooses to.
One of the reasons I was always surprised not to see Affinity do better in Legacy events is, look at this turn 1. That's a really exciting turn 1 in a certain sense. But if you think about it another way, he's only got 3 damage coming in next turn, despite all of that action.
Yeah, well, again, a top deck Tezzeret or a Cranial Plating will suddenly shift the balance of power back towards Josh. But, yeah, Evan's not in bad shape right now. Like you said, Josh is only threatening to do 3 points of damage next turn. And we know that he just is left with a Glimmer Void and a Galvanic Blast. So Tezzeret, Affinity is capable of doing these things where, they'll just unleash cards onto the board. And it looks really scary sometimes. But when the dust settles, you kind of realize, oh wait, they only have like 3 power in play.
Yep. Turbo nothing almost in a sense. Galvanic Blast doing 4 damage if it resolves.
So yep, drops Evan to 14 now.
Very aggressive. Glimmer Void, Darksteel Citadel, Cranial Plating.
And we know Evan does have a Snapcaster Mage, which can jump in front of that Frogmite to kind of slow the bleeding a little bit. Evan's only unsure of 1 card in Josh's hand, so that looks like that is what's going to happen.
Die, Frogmite, die. Take 0.
So Evan's in pretty good shape. Josh has no gas left.
Yeah, that Glimmer Void, sorry, the Thoughtseize earlier taking the Cranial Plating. 0-1. That Galvanic Blast looking a little too aggressive now.
Yeah, and Evan now has no turn 3 play. He does have a Thoughtseize, but with only 1 card in his hand, doesn't really need to use it right now.
Oh!
Here comes Tezzeret. Tezzeret, no one would really say Tezzeret's a better Planeswalker than Jace, but in this particular situation...
that's a monster.
Threatening to do a lot of damage next turn.
And he says, okay. So Tezzeret's first mode is to look at the top 5 cards of the library and reveal an artifact. You can put it into your hand and the rest get impulsed to the bottom of the library. The second mode is to turn any artifact into a 5/5 creature. That's a -1 ability. And its ultimate ability, that is target player loses X life, you gain X life, where that is twice the number of artifacts you control. He opts for -1 to bring a 6 power into play. 5 from the original Tez and 1 more from the Signal Pest.
Yeah, so it's going to be a tough situation for Evan here. Not only does he have to contend with the 5/5 in play, but he also has to contend with the Tezzeret.
Yep.
So he can drop a Jace here and bounce the bounce the Springleaf Drum, but he'll still have to deal with the Tezzeret, which can just make a Darksteel Citadel a 5/5 or a Mox Opal a 5/5. So let's see, does Evan get any help here? No, it looks like it still comes down to Jace bounce, perhaps.
Yeah, and a little bit of discussion back and forth between Evan and either a spectator or the judge or his opponent. A Jace here bouncing the 5 power drum is basically just a speed bump.
It's just a fog for the turn, basically. Josh is likely going to, unless he draws something like a cranial plating. Oh, okay, so there's a Frogmite there. So you'd imagine he probably is just going to go after the Jace here, since he can't kill Evan. But let's see what he does here. Swing. And are we going to go after the Jace or just try to Dome? So yeah, Jace definitely dies. And here comes a Frogmite. And again, we're basically in the same situation we were last time, except because of the Supreme Verdict, because of the Darksteel Citadel's indestructibility, even a Supreme Verdict won't destroy it.
That's really sick. An indestructible 5/5. It's not even a Lich.
So Evan draws a Vindicate for the Tezzeret, but then he'll die to the creatures. He can Vindicate the Frogmite or the Signal Pest, but he still has to deal with that 5/5 indestructible Darksteel Citadel, which he cannot Vindicate, unfortunately.
His chances to remove that, he can chump it with Lingering Souls or any other creature like his Stoneforge Mystics or Snapcaster Mages if he has any. I think his hand is free of answers. He's got to Vindicate for something that's not the 5/5, but what else? Thoughts? He's just checking for more information now. What else you got in there?
Evan can't win this game. Josh is going to just activate his Darksteel Citadel, make his Darksteel Citadel a 5/5 and attack for 10, 12, 13, 14, 15 damage. Yep, so Darksteel Citadel. Oh wow, he just makes the Signal Pest a 5/5. So either way, everything's coming in, and Evans concedes there.
Scoop. Now, we're going to go to our sideboards pretty quickly here. Evan Allen has at least 2 instant auto adds. That's 1 Disenchant, 1 Path to Exile. I think a Path to Exile acts like a Swords to Plowshares ++. There are no basic lands in Josh Wheeler's deck.
Yeah, Josh, you know, the main threat out of Josh's deck is that Cranial Plating. He's got to have ways to deal with Cranial Plating because it makes all his threats very dangerous. Tezzeret's probably the next most important card in this matchup for him.
Supreme Verdict is another card Evan Allen can bring in. It's a little bit slow, but it also, unless there's a Darksteel Citadel attacking you, effective at wiping the board of all non-Ink Moths, of which there are only 2 in this list. Kind of unusual for what you'd expect to see, but Josh Wheeler's list is trying to make sure it casts a Tezzeret, so color is of a premium.
Yeah, in general, I think the Affinity deck is probably favored game 1, simply because it's much more aggressive. It can put this critical mass of creatures into play early on, and most Stoneforge decks don't have multiple Supreme Verdicts in their main deck. After board, though, you know, Evan does have answers in, you know, Detention Sphere, another Supreme Verdict. Even a card like Zealous Persecution isn't necessarily bad in this matchup because it can deal with Signal Pest, Meb Knight, along with Ink Moth activations. So definitely a lot more options for Allen after board. So let's see. And Josh, on the other hand, Josh really doesn't have that many cards for this matchup. He has most of his cards are dealt for combo decks, which are more of a problematic matchup for him. Ensnaring Bridge, obviously, for cards like for decks like Show and Tell, Tormod's Crypt for, you know, decks like Dredge and Ant, perhaps. He's got 2 copies of Flusterstorm, which really aren't relevant in this matchup, along with Perish and Ethersworn Canonist. So you can see his deck is really geared towards combo decks more because that's the archetype that he's more scared of than anything else. He does have 3 copies of Pine Needle. That's the one card I could see possibly coming in because it does shut off Stoneforge Mystic, which obviously turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic and a turn 3 Batterskull are one of the key plays for the Stoneforge deck, and probably something that Josh is somewhat concerned about. So I could see Pied Needle perhaps coming in.
I almost feel like the way Josh Wheeler's deck is built, he came to the match quasi pre-boarded.
Yeah.
I mean, his cards, there's not a single card amongst them that I would say, yeah, that should get out of there.
Yeah, the only card I could see cutting for the Pine Needles would be Galvanic Blast, but the problem there is that Galvanic Blast sort of serves that role anyway, it can kill a Stoneforge Mystic and keep him off a turn 3 Batterskull, but it also can go to the face and can also deal with Jace the Mind Sculptors. So it serves the same role as Pine Needle, but just has more flexibility. So I agree with you. I think his game 1 is pretty much the same deck that he wants afterboard.
Now both of these players 5-0 thus far, and Esper Stoneblade is, as we said earlier, considered by many to be the de facto best deck in Legacy, and I know that Patrick Chapin has claimed that the only reason Esper Stoneblade hasn't taken over Legacy is the gentleman's agreement to just play other decks.
Yeah, I know Tom Martell feels the same way. You know, clearly it plays some very powerful cards, but in the end, it is still a fair deck. And fair decks, you know, don't necessarily always beat the unfair decks. You know, I've seen Esper Blade lose to decks like Elves and Dredge fairly handily.
Absolutely.
Not to mention Ant, because, you know, fair decks don't always draw the side of their deck that they need to in those matchups. You know, a lot of Stoneblade decks, they skimp on the number of Force of Wills that they're playing sometimes because they just can't afford to play 4. So to say that it's the best deck in the format, I think that's a bit of a leap.
I'm with you on that. I think it is a little bit of a leap.
Yeah, it's just I don't think in a format this diverse you can claim a fair deck to be the best deck. You know, I've seen Esper Blade lose to Dredge when Dredge mulliganed to 3.
Yep.
You know,
talking to Adam Jansen from the Star City Games Milwaukee Champion Legacy, he actually says, and I've heard this from a number of people who play Sneak and Show, that in his experience, and he's one of those people that does play a lot of decks, that he felt like Sneak and Show is head and shoulders above other decks. But you know, one of the things that we've definitely seen is Sneak and Show rise to dominance, and then people turn their guns at it and just shoot it down.
Yeah, and I can, if someone were to tell me they thought that Sneak and Show was the best deck in the format, I don't necessarily agree with that, but I at least could, you know, understand that. I think their argument would be slightly more valid than the Stoneblade version, because, you know, it's a powerful combo deck that also plays Force of Will, which you can't really fault anyone for.
Ornithopter, is that an Antiquities original?
Yeah, it
looks like it.
And it looks like he did, in fact, bring in the Pithing Needle. Are we going to name Jace the Mind Sculptor or Stoneforge Mystic? So, Pithing Needle comes down. Looks like Evan's debating whether or not he wants to Spell Pierce that Pithing Needle. And he does have the Zealous Persecution too, so he boarded it in. And,
does it work?
Does it resolve? It does resolve. We'll find out what it names in a second here. And Evan, ooh, wow. Evan does not have a second mana.
Oh, really? What did you keep?
So it looks like Josh has a Master of Ethereum. It looks like we're going to get a Thoughtcast here for 2, which will likely get Spell Pierced. Particularly given the fact that Evan is landlight, I think he needs to kind of slow down Josh as much as he can. Are we going to get a Spell Pierce here? Evan has a lot of his sideboard cards. He has a disenchant. Maybe he just felt that I have a lot of sideboard cards I will eventually draw out of this. So, you know, he does have...
that is an aggressive choice against a deck that might just grab your throat and just choke you down. Like,
oh, wow. He let the Thoughtcast resolve. And that's key there because Josh did not have a third mana yet to actually cast the Master of Ethereum in his hand. So, oh, and there's a second land.
See a disenchant, I believe, amongst those.
Pretty, you know, now that he has 2 mana, he's in decent shape. He does have that Stoneforge Mystic, so he can disenchant the Pithing Needle, if that is in fact what the Pithing Needle named.
What does that do? Oh, well, it's pretty big.
Currently it is a 5/5, so it will be the target of any Swords to Plowshares that you have in your hand. Looks like, yep, Master of Ethereum pumping up the Ornithopter. Currently it is sitting at a 4/4, I believe, or no, 5/5.
You can see that alt art Swords to Plowshare sitting in hand.
And there it is, Plowshares and the Master of Ethereum. Ornithopter drops back down to an 0/2. Josh gains 5 life.
That Master is removed from the game.
Yes, there is no Tarmogoyf in this format. Are there two? I'm not sure if I can't tell from the glare. It looks like there might be two Tundras in play.
I can only see glare. Oh, there's a Tundra and a Tundra. Very good eyes.
So there are two
eyes.
Tundras. So he currently does not have access to the Zealous Persecution, but he can cast all the other spells in his hand. There's a Lingering Souls, but again, no third land. What do we have here? We have a Glimmer Void. So the Spell Pierce hasn't really. Etched Champion. Wow, that cannot be targeted by anything if it resolves, which it looks like it will be. And
Evan's like, what does that do?
For a second, I thought that might have been a concession.
I thought so too.
Etched Champion, I concede. So
I thought that's what that was.
So yep, it looks like we're gonna have a Disenchant on the Pine Needle, so Stoneforge can come into play. Not sure if but thankfully Josh does have a Galvanic Blast to deal with the Etched Champion once it does resolve. And there's a Ponder from Evan Allen, so he'll be able to dig now for some more mana. This is a risky play here because if he doesn't hit a land, then he's not going to be able to play the Stoneforge this turn. So he's going to be really.
There it is.
There it is. So he does have the third land. Sigh of relief from on Evan's side.
Now, when Evan does fetch up the inevitable Batterskull, or though I suppose he could get Umezawa's Jitte as well, the Batterskull Germ is black, so the Etched or the Etched Champion does not have to worry about it at all.
Yeah, so ideally, Evan plays Stoneforge here, and Josh... Oh, nope, he just decides to pass. Wants to keep up Spell Pierce mana. Maybe he's still afraid of that Tezzeret that dominated the first game.
Mox and a land. Now a Spell Pierce won't stop a potential Tezzeret. That doesn't mean it's going to be cast.
He's going to be able to deal with it. He can cast Zealous Persecution to deal with one of the Inkmoth Nexuses this turn, though, if he chooses. So, yep. Evan takes 2 damage and 1 poison counter. And Josh just passes the turn back. And now Evan has 4 mana, so he's able to cast Jace or cast Stoneforge Mystic or cast Lingering Souls. There's a lot of options now open to Evan. So a risky keep on his part, but Josh wasn't able to capitalize.
Stoneforge Mystic hits the table. Will he get Umezawa's Jitte or Batterskull? Batterskull it is, the classic grab for the Stoneforge Mystic.
And are we going to see Josh attempt to just cast Galvanic Blast on that Stoneforge Mystic now? Let's see what he does. And that's exactly what it looks like here.
Die, die, die.
Die. Die. Evan has a Spell Pierce, but Josh has plenty of mana to play around that. So, yep.
You got it.
Stoneforge dies, and Josh really needs a Cranial Plating here or a Tezzeret. I think he's still in real danger of losing control of this game now that Evan has mana. And there's the Springleaf Drum, not going to do it. So, I think Evan can... This is going to be dangerous because he doesn't know about the Zealous Persecution, but, why wouldn't you activate both your Nexuses?
Yeah, why not?
But, yep. Is going to get blown out here with the Zealous Persecution.
And Evan Allen
so quickly sacks those lands. And yep, going to get an Underground Sea and a Scrubland or a Tundra. Maybe another. So he gets Underground Sea and Tundra, and he casts Zealous Persecution targeting Josh. So pretty good turn for Evan here. He's going to be able to deal with both those Blinkmouth Nexuses. And, yeah, and the S Champion just shrinks down to a 1/1.
Take 1.
Now, again, that was a great turn for Evan, but, Josh still has a chance. I think he should have played that Springleaf Drum, too, because you want to play around Spell Pierce. But looks like Evan has now 5th mana. He can play that Batterskull now.
And now, in order to quote-unquote do the most damage, Etched Champion has to sit back, essentially just to defend against the lifelink of the Batterskull.
Yeah, Josh is really going to need to draw a Tezzeret right now. Things are going to get a little crazy pretty soon. If he draws a Tezzeret, he's still in good shape because he has 6 artifacts in play right now. So 1 activation to +1 to Tezzeret. try to dig for another artifact, and suddenly you can ultimate the Tezzeret and dome your Evan for exactly 14 or possibly more. So let's see what Josh draws this turn. Thought Cat. Oh, wow,
Glimmer
just a
Void?
Glimmer Void.
Plays the Glimmer Void, says go. Hanging back with the protection from all colors, Etched Champion.
So Evan starting to slowly regain control of this match. He's got Jace the Mind Sculptor. He has Batterskull.
Lingering Souls in hand, right? So he can actually go to the air if he wants.
Yeah, he also drew a second Stoneforge Mystic.
Ugh.
So he can search for Umezawa Jitte and cast Lingering Souls this turn and actually get that Jitte online next turn.
Evan Allen checking out. Oh yeah, Pro Colors. That's right. The germ doesn't help.
Yeah, so let's see if that's what he does. Is he going to play Lingering Souls? Oh, just Lingering Souls and Flashback.
Yep. 4 Spirits.
So I like this play because it makes it difficult for Josh to go ultimate with Tezzeret now. So
I mean, I feel like at that point, Josh would be stuck in the exciting position of turning his Ornithopter into a 5/5.
yeah, so
And that's a very vulnerable thing. It can be Vindicated, it can be Disenchanted, it can be Swords to Plowshare, it can be Pathed.
let's see, and Evan just draws a Mystic Gate here. So now we can actually play Stoneforge Mystic, search Jitte, and then cast it and equip one of the tokens. But it looks like he's just going to equip up with the Batterskull instead.
And the germ, 0/0 as it is, dies. In comes the team, 3 1/1s and a 5/5 Vigilant Lifelinker.
And I'm not sure, I mean, Cranial Plating is still a good draw here. You know, runner, Cranial Plating will win you the game. But yeah, it's going to be, Josh is going to be hard pressed here. Likely going to need, you know, Tezzeret dig into for Cranial Plating wouldn't be that bad.
Is that the Mystic Gate?
Yeah.
The colorless producing Mystic Gate, currently. No other mana to help it out. A second Ornithopter, not what Josh Wheeler needs to see. Tap some mana.
Get that Springleaf Drum into play.
There's a drum.
So,
No cards in hand.
You know, Josh definitely has outs. But,
Venser.
Wow, they're getting fewer and fewer each turn. So Evan keeping a risky 1-land hand, but he did have a lot of his sideboard cards, so decided it was worth it. And here we go. It looks like we might get the Stoneforge for Jitte, cast Jitte and equip.
And that will tear down, I think, Josh Wheeler's last hope for having any victory here.
Yeah, the counter is, you know, not a colored permanent, so he can actually target the Etched Champion with it.
In comes the crew.
So looks like everything's going to swing in here.
Now remember, Evan Allen missed his second turn land drop.
Surprised he'd yeah, I'm surprised he just didn't equip the token as well, because if Josh did have a Galvanic Blast, he would have been able to kill the Jitte token. So surprising he didn't just equip up his Batterskull token. But either way, both are gonna connect, and Umezawa Jitte will get 2 counters.
Josh Wheeler.
He will in fact kill that Etched Champion right away.
Yep. Josh Wheeler drawing, I think, practically dead here.
There's
Galvanic
a
Blast,
Galvanic
his only
Blast.
card, but it's too late. Nothing else in his hand.
So Evan Allen, despite a risky keep, manages to even up this match, and we're going to game 3 now with Josh Wheeler on the play. So it's interesting here. You know, Josh did have the Pithing Needles, but he also had Galvanic Blast that game. So I wonder what he boarded out. Did he maybe just shave some of those Galvanic Blasts out of his deck and kind of go half-half maybe?
Did he? I mean, I feel like he should keep in his Signal Pest, but maybe he boarded it out.
I don't see why you'd want to board out the. I mean, Signal Pest isn't amazing in this matchup, but it's.
I'm just trying to figure out where he would get the room for the needles. I mean,
Yeah, I don't like boarding out Signal Pest just because at least it can tap for mana off of the Springleaf Drum.
yeah, and I mean, also it can carry a Cranial Plating very well.
Yeah, so. Yeah, because obviously Allen can only block with Lingering Souls tokens. So I don't see him boarding out Signal Pass. Maybe he just went down to maybe 2 Galvanic Blast, 2 Piden Needles. Maybe he just boarded in 1 Piden Needle. But we'll see in Game 3 here. It looks like both players are going back to the well to see if maybe they can adjust their strategy a little bit. Or at least Josh is. With Josh being on the play, maybe he doesn't think Piden Needle is nearly as relevant anymore. So let's see what he does here. It looks like maybe, is he taking out the Springleaf Drums? Wow. I would not have expected that. You know, one of the appeals of a deck like this is the fact that, you know, cards like Mox Opal and Springleaf Drum in combination with Ornithopter and Memnite allow you to really get a fast Tezzeret into play. So I'm surprised he'd want to board out the Springleaf Drum.
Maybe what he is thinking about here is he likes all of his spells and he's hoping to get lucky. You know, like...
But I mean, I agree with you. I thought his deck was better equipped when he was just Game 1 deck. Like, I don't want to dilute it with cards like Piden Needle.
Yeah, I mean, that Piden Needle, it basically sat. I mean, it certainly influenced the game briefly, but what if that had been, I don't know what was cut for it. I have no idea.
Yeah.
I don't know what he cut for it.
I mean, it certainly was okay that game because it soaked up a disenchant, so I don't think it's terrible, but I certainly wouldn't want to cut a Springleaf Drum for it. I mean, one of the things about this deck that it can do that's so exciting is, you know, getting to go turn 1 Springleaf Drum, Memnite, Mox Opal, land, Tezzeret on turn 2. I mean, obviously that's somewhat of Magical Christmas Land, but you know, why would you want to dilute the chances of that happening simply for a Piden Needle? I mean, I could see maybe cutting one for a Piden Needle, just so you have like 5 answers to a Toon 2 Stormforge Mystic, but you know.
I don't even know that I want to do that, though. Like, one of the things I don't really want to be doing when I'm a deck like Affinity is looking for answers. You know, I want to be presenting questions.
Yeah,
and
I like being very aggressive when I'm Affinity.
Me too. I mean, you only look for answers when you're the aggressive deck if something will utterly destroy you. I do not think that Jace utterly destroys you. And I actually don't even think that Stoneforge Mystic utterly destroys you because you have access first to utter speed and second to Galvanic Blast.
Yeah, I think turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, turn 3 activate is annoying, like you said, but it's not backbreaking. It's not like you're Merfolk, you know, and you have to contend with that. You're an Affinity deck that has the potential of doing an insane amount of damage on turn 3 and 4. So I think that you don't want to dilute your deck and kind of not be able to do that. And like Galvanic Blast is a similar function. You know, it's very flexible. It allows you to deal with that turn 2 Stoneforge Mystic, but it also allows you to do 4 damage to the face. So yeah, I kind of agree with you. I like his main deck for Game 1. I wouldn't really want to change anything. And I know that seems strange. I know a lot of people might think, well, why wouldn't I want to change my deck? I have this sideboard. It just feels wrong to keep the same 60 cards for games 2 and 3. But sometimes it's the right choice.
I mean, one of the major problems that you can do with any deck is cease to be the deck that you are. You know, sometimes you don't want to be the same deck you were in the first game, but we were talking about the old days of Pro Tour Kobe, I want to say last night or maybe this morning, and one of the things about that Pro Tour, which is the Affinity Pro Tour, a lot of people, what they ended up doing, they sideboarded their Affinity deck too much, and what was the result? They had these sluggish draws that didn't make use of the explosive potential that the deck was capable of otherwise producing.
Yeah, and that's why I like when you see those dredge decks in Legacy that don't even have a sideboard, you know? Because they figure, you know, my deck is favored against pretty much every deck in the format Game 1, and after board, it's on you to have enough hate cards. I don't need to change my deck. I'm not going to dilute it. I'm going to keep it streamlined. It's going to do the same thing it did Game 1. You gotta, the onus is on you to adapt, not me.
One of my favorite deck-focused articles is probably Richard Feldman's Fearless Dredge, which if you get a chance, if you are a Dredge fan, it's a little bit archaic because some cards didn't exist yet, but the concept is powerful. And if you look at his analysis, he went through numerous events where he and several other Dredge players kept track. And you know what? They basically found that sideboard cards pretty much almost never influenced matches. For that match, for that particular deck.
So it looks like both players kept their hand. We have a turn 1 Memnite. And there's a Springleaf Drum, and he does have a Pithing Needle.
There's an Ornithopter. You got 1 power in play currently.
So it looks like Pie Needle will come down.
Or maybe he's going to name a land.
Polluted Delta. Sick read. Come on. Sick read in a Polluted Delta. Let's go. Nope. Looks like it's, in all likelihood, it's probably a Stoneforge Mystic. But what we're going to have here, we're going to have a turn 1 Thoughtseize. Oh, wow.
Nothing left.
Great Thoughtseize there. He gets the Etch Champion, which is the main threat that Josh had left in his deck.
Nothing left. Just the
In
1
his hand,
power.
rather.
1 power left. Memnite off the top, doubling the power. A grand total of his opponent, Evan Allen, at 17 life, a 9 turn clock in play.
Yeah, so pretty unfortunate for Josh here. It just doesn't have nearly enough pressure. He's back in top deck mode again, just like he was last game, you know. And Evan now has a Swords to Plowshare, so one of the key cards that Josh could have drawn was Cranial Plating. And it's still going to be good if he draws it, but at least Evan does have a Swords to Plowshare to mitigate the damage for at least a turn. So Josh in a tough situation here. Even a top deck Tezzeret isn't enough because he doesn't have enough mana.
I wonder what that Pithing Needle would have been.
If it was a Springleaf Drum, I hope it's... Yeah, if the Tezzeret is drawn, then he's going to regret boarding out that that Springleaf Drum. But looks like Thoughtcast will resolve here. Gives him a little more action.
So good for him. Perhaps the best card he could draw.
Yeah. So draws an Inkmouth Nexus and a Galvanic Blast. And we're going to get a swing here with both Memnites, dropping Evan Allen to 15. So Evan still in a pretty good position here. He's got Swords to Plowshare. And he continues to make his mana drops. He has Ponder to continue to manipulate his draws and try to get a little more... if he gets that Zealous Persecution, then it's going to be really good for him. But oh, wow. So Evan reveals Inquisition of Kozilek, Academy Runes, and a Disenchant. So likely wants to keep that Disenchant, especially if he has a Snapcaster in his hand, which I believe he might. But or maybe not. No, so it doesn't look like he has Snapcaster. But now he has Swords to Plowshare and Disenchant. So 2 removal spells for possibly a Cranial Plating.
And we know Josh Wheeler's hand is a single solitary Galvanic Blast.
Wow, so Josh maybe a little scared from that Zealous Persecution last game. Doesn't want to attack with the Inkmouth Nexus this time. So just attacks Evan down to 13. Evan draws. Looks like he has a 4th land. So this is going to be a pretty good turn for Evan if he just plays a land and passes, because he can actually Venser mid-combat one of the Memnite tokens and then block the other. So let's see if that's what he chooses to do.
I would be unsurprised if he didn't just lay a Jace. I think your play is a little bit better, but the draw of the Jace, the appeal of the Jace can
there's no rush to play Jace, though. I
like your play better.
I like either passing and playing Venser or Inquisition of Kozilek here to clear. But again, I don't think you need Inquisition.
And he does pass.
So here we have it looks like a Master of Ethereum might have been drawn.
Pump up the team. And now I think during combat what we're going to see is the bouncing of the Master.
Yeah, so we might get the bouncing of the Master here. Josh does have a Galvanic Blast. He might just use it on the Venser to clear the path.
Shortcut, crack, crack, crack. 3 lands.
Yeah, so Evan's taking a lot of damage here. He drops down to 10. And he's going to cast a Venser here. Let's see what Josh does here. I'm not sure what the... So Evan has access to 4 mana. Are we going to see a Swords and a Disenchant or Venser? I'm with you. I think Venser is probably going to come down here. Venser bouncing Master of Ethereum. Or Venser bouncing maybe... okay. So Venser does come down, bounces the Master of Ethereum. Is Josh going to tap it in the Springleaf Jump in response to Galvanic Blast it? Or
he's like, hang on a second. I get a chance here before you get to block.
So yes, he will Galvanic Blast that, clearing the way, dropping Evan to 8.
Now, with that Master in hand, Josh can attack next turn with the Ornithopter and the 2 Memnites for 5, potentially. But Evan is not without answers. He has Swords to Plowshares in hand, Disenchant in hand. The Inquisition is going to knock that Master out of there. Goodbye, Master.
And now we might see Jace come down and just bounce one of the Memnites.
Boom. Empty-handed Josh Wheeler. We see...
no, we have Fate Seal instead.
Fate Seal, and keep it. That's bad news for Josh.
So So plays the Darksteel Citadel. At this point, I think you're probably better off just attacking Evan.
I mean, it's a hard call. When the Planeswalker's loyalty and the opponent's life are so close. Ooh.
Yeah, if Josh could get rid of the Jace, I think it's fine. But I think you want to just go after, use the Nexus to go after the Jace and just attack Evan's life total here.
Exactly what he does. He uses the poison creation of the Nexus there to just plick a little touch off of that Jace.
And Evan draws a Detention Sphere now, which he could potentially use to clear the Memnites off the board. He's going to Fate Seal first. Let's see. Okay, so he puts that on the bottom. Are we just going to maybe just get a... Yep. So Batterskull's going to come down. So now, pretty rough shape here. He does have one free card here off of a Jace.
Will he get there?
Oh.
Frog.
Not nearly as devastating as a Tezzeret or a Cranial Plating.
Activating Inkmoth.
So yeah, top deck Cranial Plating would have been game there. You could have equipped the Inkmoth Nexus and done exactly 11 points of poison, I believe. But
or the Ornithopter and just damage to the face.
Yeah, but doesn't look like poison's still an option. But Evan's going to have access to Swords to Plowshares ×2 now, it appears, and Disenchant. So
I think it's been wrapped up with a nice little bow.
Yeah, Evan's sitting pretty nicely right now. Going to continue to Fate Seal, make sure that nothing scary like Cranial Plating or Tezzeret shows up. And yep, Evan lets Josh keep that card, and things slowly slipping away from Josh's control now.
Another Ornithopter. If you look at the back of the Ice Age rulebook for Magic, it does have a very small print. We apologize to anyone who has ever died to an Ornithopter.
So here we have Inkmoth Nexus gets taken care of with the Swords to Plowshare. And, you know, this is one of those situations with the Infinity player. It's just so frustrating because you're just slowly getting grinded out here by Jace, Batterskull, and here we see it looks like Evan drew another Stoneforge Mystic too. So potentially you're going to see Umezawa Jitte might come down in a couple of turns, but.
Every time that card stays there, it just is the sinking feeling. Jace saying, that doesn't matter. That doesn't matter. You don't
Doesn't matter. You don't care. I don't care about you. And Josh doesn't even have Sacklands in his deck to sort of get a free draw, so... yep. Very, very slowly but surely, Josh is going to continue to lose to that Batterskull and Jace the Mind Sculptor. It's one of those situations where Evan can basically choose, do I want to kill him with the Jace's Ultimate, or slowly, eventually, just kill him with life.
One of the things that's also happening is Evan is just using those two abilities rather than putting anything else out there, at least up until this point. And it's partly because there's no way out for Josh.
Yeah.
There is no way out. Well, pardon me. After the Jace is activated, then you can determine if there's no way out. Now there's a slight window, right? The top deck Tezzeret, could that do it?
It looks like Evan did draw a counterspell.
Oh, he's got a counterspell?
I think it's a judge promo counterspell.
Well, then even a top deck Tezzeret won't do it.
Yeah, Evan is in really good shape.
Yeah, that's it.
Not much Josh can do in this match. There's another. Evan does have multiple answers to that as well, though. So
here comes the team.
Gonna try to knock down Jace a little bit. Let's see what Evan decides to do here. Wow, it looks like he's gonna try to just get rid of both of them. He wants the Jace to go ultimate next turn.
And Jace goes down to 12, and that's just fine. It costs 12 loyalty for Jace to do his ultimate. Josh packs it up, packs it in, and that is the end of this match.
So Evan Allen, you know, kept a risky hand in Game 2 with a lot of his sideboard cards, and he managed to draw into some lands. And in Game 3, just, you know, dominated Evan, mostly because of a timely Thoughtseize, which took care of a Etched Champion, which was basically the only real threat left in Josh's hand.
And if you remember,